Well, a very good morning. Today is a Wednesday, the 24th of January. Another beautiful day to wake up and come to the program to give you what is happening around the country in terms of current affairs and developmental issues. My name is Sifiso Shumnakbili. I'm not alone. I'm with Mfambeni. It's back. I'm happy to be back on this chair.
Yeah.
So it feels really good to be in the studio.
School.
Yes, I was
And
on the ground.
Mangayane as well.
Yeah,
So it was a good day and tiring as well.
It was a great experience. I think for me, one of my favorite days of the year, kubona nje bantwana bajabula kubuyela esikolweni, and just to know the significance of education. I think even for us sitting here today, we're a result of education, and to the child right now preparing to go to school, I think they can take that as a motivation to know ukuthi yes, if you dimisela esikolweni likusasa lakho litawubangela litawuqhakaza mfowethu.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my interviews. So there was this particular one. She was tiny. She was grade 8. I mean, no form 1. But yeah, but they are focused. But dimisela ukuthi no bayaqala esikoleni, but dimisela for the entire year.
Yeah, senzelwe MCB ka boys.
Yeah,
I remember that one. And you know what? She actually joined the interview voluntarily. We're actually interviewing two young girls, was a form 1 and a form 5. She was looking at us, wabona ngathi this looks interesting. And she gave us an interview, even though she said she was nervous. It was quite interesting for her. Because a lot of people love me.
Yeah. All right. So today is International Day for Education. The United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 24th January as International Day for Education in celebration of the role of education for peace and development. Ngekusho kwenhlangano UNESCO lamuhla 250 million wabantwana abekho esikolweni and 763 million adults abakhona ukufunda nekubhala. Umgomoke wesine wakamhlaba ulokhonsako ugcizelela yona indzaba yokubaluleka kwemfundo lilinganako nalesezingeni lelifanele. We'll be joined by the Secretary General ka UNESCO Eswatini Lwandle Simelane to shed more light on progress made towards quality education targets in Eswatini and also challenges faced in Silive last Eswatini. Sabes naye namhlanje 7:30.
Yeah, we'll also be joined by LinkedIn Gule, our senior journalist via a video link, who is corresponding from Uganda in Kampala, where His Excellency the Prime Minister Russell Dlamini has been representing His Majesty King Mswati III and the nation at the 19th Summit of Heads of State and Government of the NAM and the 3rd South Summit of Leaders of the G77 and China. The G77 3rd South Summit is aimed at bridging the gap between rich and poor nations and to level the playing field between North and South. Delegates from the world's developing nations have called for the development of a fairer global system that will take into consideration the struggles of developing countries, as well as make sure that every country develops equally. They will they represent 80% of the world's population. LinkedIn Kule will share with us in detail the recommendations proposed by the leaders there and how Eswatini will benefit from all of it. Nyalo 6:30. That's join us via Zoom video link.
Yeah, kungmanje sibuke nathi ile thamba imbili kumaphepha. Let's go e-times of Eswatini sibuke thamba imbili namhla. Anzukule thamba imbili, gruesome murder, businessman robbed, throat slit. Matapa-based businessman's body was found dumped in forest at Malkens. Thugs demanded pins and they also withdrew money from ATMs. Katege was tied up and bundled into boots. Wife was also assaulted with bush knives and tied with tape as home also ransacked. More on that story on page 2. On the opening of schools yesterday, there was frustration and excitement as well. Elangeni Laitolo. Kuletinye Tamba Mbili search for 30,000 pupils missing in system. Government to contract teachers don't go to school until. Read more. Besekuletinye Tamba Mbili 7 reasons for getting travel document on page 9.
Temidlalo Times of Eswatini this Wednesday morning following Sihlangu appointment. EFA beats Bull in Neuro race. Lenders Ali reveals interest in seasoned Gaffer who has since joined Sihlangu. I am disappointed. My target has been taken by Sihlangu. These were the words by Black and White Capital City Giants Babane Highlanders Managing Director Chief Ali Khomongwe on the latest development that former Real Leopard Award-winning coach Sfiso Nuron Dibane has joined the national team Sihlangu technical bench. On another one, young Eswatini is off to AFCON to watch quarters rather. Sanzalo Nkosi Nhlabathi, who is a young football enthusiast from Eswatini, is set to embark on an unforgettable journey to the Africa Cup of Nations quarterfinals, courtesy of Total Energies. The last leading story there is Cameroon being through to the last 16 after beating Gambia 3-2 at the Africa Cup of Nations.
All right, so moving on to the Eswatini Observer. Leti Hamba school sends pupils home owed 550,000 emalangeni. PS Waga Education Gama says, why are parents sending children to school without paying? Kulenyele Hamba Mataba businessman abducted and killed. More on page 3. Let Hamba government upgrades driver's license standards.
The leading story on the Eswatini Observer, Temidlalo, way beyond budget as the EFA needs 500 million emalangeni for a new stadium. Eswatini to continue paying more to host games. EFA spends 40 million a year and FIFA cannot build a stadium for Eswatini. Are there bullets there under that headline? Another one, and Elite League games Saturday. All MTN Premier League games will be played on Saturday. The last leading story, indomitable Lions dramatically edge Scorpions, where Cameroon dramatically secured their spot in the round 16 in the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations as they defeated Gambia 3-2 at the Stade de la Paix in Bouake.
Leading headlines on the Eswatini Daily News. 2 million emalangeni budget for Pali opening. The countdown is on for the state opening of the Eswatini Parliament. Kulenye Lehamba Mbili education's relief as FPE funds reach nearly all schools. Kanti kuletini Lehamba Mbili Taiwan Medical Mission brings relief to Ungilongo.
Kutemidlalo Eswatini Daily News, the leading story still Eswatini needs 500 million emalangeni for a new stadium, according to the EFA CEO Frederick Mgometulu, who says to build a 15,000 to 20,000 seater stadium, it would cost an arm and leg for the country, and FIFA has not allocated any funds to build a stadium for all 211 member countries. Another story speaks to blow for birds as Felix is out for up to 3 weeks after sustaining an injury. The last one, Hunt gives Billiard a thumbs down.
It's 9 minutes after 6. Ngilethela Thamba Mbili kumaphepha ndzaba sabahlole timakethe sibeni ndzaba teswati.
Umsakazo wetithombe iEswatini TV utibophelele kuhlonipha nekulandzela umgomo wetekusakata loweluswe libandla letekuchumana eveni.
Ngephansi kwalomgomo sitimisele kusakata tindzaba letenteka ngaleso sikhatsi, tindzaba letide emagama lacosheme, letitsembekile, letitsintsa tonke tinhlangothi naletisebaleni.
Kusukela kutepolitiki, tetemphilo, tekulima, tetinkantolo netemhlaba wonke jikelele, siniletsela tindzaba njengoba tinjalo ngaleso sikhatsi letenteka ngaso.
Kanzi kulomsakato siphindze sikulethele lonke luhlobo lwetemidlalo kusuka emidlalweni welibhola letinyawo kuye emidlalweni ledlalelwa ematafuleni kanye naleto letiqhamuka ngaphandle kwakuleli.
Leti tindzaba loutiletselwa ngumsakazo wetithombe iEswatini TV.
Asiphindele sinemukele nati tindzaba tifunda ngilungelele Magagula. Umthandishi waNdunankulu Russell Dlamini sowukhuthate bukhosi baseBuganda iveni le-Uganda kutsi buchubeke buhambise imbili kuthula kudesive sitawuthuthuka. Ndunankulu ukukhulume lokhu ngesikhathi yavakashele inhlokohovisi yebukhosi Buganda Kingdom enhlokodolobha yelive le-Uganda eKampala.
Kuhlatshelwa kwengoma yesive yaseswatini kube indlela lekhethekile kwemukela umhlonishwa waNdunankulu Russell Dlamini enhlokohovisi yebukhosi beBuganda Kingdom lapha eveni le-Uganda. Ndunankulu wemukelwe ngumlingani wakhe webukhosi beBuganda Kingdom umhlonishwa Charles Mayika. Bukhosi beBuganda Kingdom buholwa-ke inkosi Kubhakha Mutebi wesibili. Ndunankulu uchazelwe ngemlando walo bukhosi nekuthi live le-Uganda lichamuka kubo lobukhosi njengoba kwasi nakufika bomandla ngengwenya e-Afrika behluleka ukuthi Buganda base bathi Uganda. Sive lesingephasi kwalobukhosi silinganiselwa etigidini letilishumi-4 kanti-ke sakha lokulishumi-6 ekhulwini esiveni sase-Uganda. Ndunankulu Charles uchazile ukuthi uke wefika eveni lakangwane ahamba nebantu benkosi balapha eBuganda. Silo semhlaba-ke sabemukela ngetandla letifuthumele.
I wish you success in your endeavors. Being a prime minister is a challenging job anywhere in the world, but it's for a reason that you are the one in charge of that office. So we've got no doubt that your tenure will bear fruits.
Ndunankulu udumise sive seBuganda Kingdom ngekuchubeka nekubambelela emasikweni. Wathi ngokanyeke lokho lokwenta ema-Afrika ehluke kuletinye tive temhlaba. Ndunankulu uthe lobukhosi abuchubeke buhambise embili kuthula njengoba nengwenyama yemaswati kuthula ngikona ikubambe ngetandla totimbili.
We are evolving in terms of our governance system, so the king is out there who's the head of state, and then we have the government that is elected by the people. We have the prime minister that is appointed, by the king. And everything works very well for us. That is why we are the most stable and peaceful country, inside Africa.
Ndunankulu bese ukhonjiswa umsakato wemoya kanye newetithombe wabo lobukhosi beBuganda. Inhloso lenkulu yale misakato kufundzisa sive ngemvelaphi yaso kanye nemasiko aso kulokunye. Sive saseBuganda Kingdom sifaka lokungama-70 ekhulwini emnothweni welive le-Uganda. Ndunankulu bese uvakashela-ke lenye tingungu letinkulu ta-oyili kulelive le-Uganda lapha achazelwe khona ukuthi live le-Uganda liyakhona kutikhicitela oyili lofikako ku-70 million liters kanti ngelilanga lidzinga 14 million wemalitha. Ndunankulu uchazele baphansi kanye netisebenzi letakha lengungu ukuthi nelive laseswatini lisemkhankasweni wekuthi litakhele ingungu yalo ya-oyili ephuza umoya. Futhi-ke njengoba mengameli Museveni ayigcizelela kakhulu indzaba yekusebenzisana uyethemba ukuthi live laseswatini kukhulu letakufunza eveni le-Uganda.
are here to learn because, as he has already said, we are interested that before the year comes to an end, we begin, to build a facility similar to this. Obviously, so we've seen how automated this whole facility is, and we are hoping that those who will be responsible to construct, a similar facility in our country will have an opportunity to come and see what you have done here. And who knows, maybe some of you will be requested to go and offer some assistance there.
Njengoba ke Ndunankulu sawephethile umsebenzi lathunywe wona ingwenyama lapha eKampala kubhekeke ukuthi alibhekise eTaliyane kuyawenta lomunye umsebenzi ngekuthunywa ngiso silo. Umbiko uhlanganiswe ngeLinkedIn Gule ngiseKampala eveni le-Uganda.
Atawubese kakhona ama-passports etindzaweni letahlukene kungakapheli inyanga letako. Imbikweni lotfunyelelwe betindzaba indvuna yelitiko letasekhaya umfana Nkosi Lindiwe isi litiko lisebenta ngalokwecile kucinisekisa kutsi ama-passports abakhona njengalokubhekekile kuleli. Kulombiko indvuna ithi kubheduka kwamkhuhlane COVID-19 kwende ukuthi ama-passports labekade akhona agcina aphelelwa sikhathi, lamanye alahleka kanti lamanye alimala njengoba sive besingakhoni kahle kuwathatha. Mfana Nkosi ukuthi kuthena kuvulwa kuthathwa kwama-passports lawuba ngcono lo mkhuhlane sase siba siningi kakhulu sive lesiwadingako lase lincipha kakhulu linani lawo lapha eveni. Lo mbiko wendvuna uthi njengoba litiko lithenga ama-passports emaveni langephandle kubheduka kwalomkhuhlane kwende ukuthi litiko libe nebulukhuni bekongeta ama-passports lapha eveni. Imvuna ithi kuqiniswa kokuphuma nekungena eminceleni nako ngilokunye lokholele ekutheni sibe siningi sive lesifuna ama-passports. Ngenxa yalokuncipha kwama-passports litiko lithi selitawunika ama-passports kulabo labanetimo letiphuthumako futhi labanetimo letididzingo. Mfana Nkosi uthi kulombiko sive lesikulolu hlangothi kufanele sibe nencwadi yadokotela, incwadi ekufundzela kulamanye emave, imvumo yekuyofundza ngaphandle, likhadi lenyuvesi, student card, imvumo yekuyocupha, incwadi yekuthi umuntu uthole umsebenzi noma ucashiwe. Imvuna ichubeka ithi tisukumele yona mathupha netisebenti telitiko kuyawukhulumisana nalenkampani leyakha ama-passports kanti yethembisile ukuthi itawucinisekisa ukuthi ayefika ama-passports kuleli masinyane. Endzabeni yekuthi kunetisebenti letibhadalisako uma sive side kutawufuna ama-passports, imvuna ithi kude umbiko lobiko ehhovisini layo mayelana nenkhohlakalo lenjengalena. Mfana Nkosi uthi sive lesinelesikhalo asisheshe siyibike lendzaba ehhovisini layo njengoba litiko ngeke limele nani inkhohlakalo. Kulombiko indvuna ichubeka iniketa isiqiniseko sokuthi litiko litawuchubeka lisebentele ebaleni ngekutikhandla kanye nekutimisela. Utawubese ukhona Petrolomiyol P95 kungakapheli leliviki etindzaweni tekuwetha letiningi kuleli. Mabhalane lomkhulu etiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla aTokas Dlamini uthi kushoda kwalo petrolom kuleli kubangwe tinkinga talapho uhulumende abewuthenga khona eveni lamakhelwane eNingizimu Afrika, kepha lokhu sekulungisiwe.
Lenkinga ayikho la kithi thina singemaswati la kulama garages ethu. Kutholakala ukuthi inkinga ngulela sicupha khona eKasason. Sithole ukuthi kune problem ye contract yabo lese expire ishile lengaka reneweki ngesikhathi. But sithe masikhulumisana nabo kwakhanzakala ukuthi sekuya ngakhona kuphutile le process ukuthi bayicale but sekuya ngakhona. Ngicabanga ukuthi lingakapheli leliviki but abese bayi-renewile contract yakhe so that akhone ku-exporta petrol kulamave lafanele nathi siye eSwatini.
Siphindze sakhulumisana naye emabhalane lomkhulu kuva ukuthi kude yini indlela yekwati tinkinga letifana naleti tingakendeki njengoba sekungemahlandla live libabede gasolina kanye naphetilomo.
The only way lesingayenda ukuthi isi-avoid ukuthi sakhe strategic oil reserve uphuza umoya. That's the only way. Ngiyabekisa njengoba kwendekela sikemekeme nasi sekuthi seku-akareneweki contract but companies they would be safer if they would then decide ukuthi hayi ukhona phuza umoya asihambeni sothenga phuza umoya. This is the only way lengalungisa lesimo and singuhulumende siyazama ngako konke lokusemandleni ukuthi sisebenze indzaba sephuza umoya siyakhe le strategic so that emaswati angabe affected in the long run.
Mabhalane lomkhulu uthi tonke taba titawukwendiwa kucinisekisa ukuthi simo lesinjengalesi asichubeki nekwendeka lapha eveni. Etindzabeni teSwatini TV kubika Nelsiwe Ndlangamandla kunavuma inkhosi inzinisa embabane.
Njengokumemetela kwahulumende tiko lwativulwe ngelisasasa lelisetulu ngalesibili ekseni njengoba abafundi babonakale bakujabulela kubuyela esikolweni nalabo labayocala libanga lekucala nabo bakutfokotele kuva insimbi ikhala lesekusho ukucala kwesikolo. Abafundi betikolo letivakashelwe ngolomsakato ekseni bavete injabulo yabo ngekuvulwa kwetikolo, bavete ukuthi balungele kucala kufundza futhi batawufundza ngekutimisela.
I think I'm just going to continue working hard on the subjects that I'm good at, and then on improving on the subject that I find difficulties in, I'm going to use past papers and maybe attend some online extra classes.
I was really excited to come here because I've been hearing a lot of things about high school, so I was excited. I'm just excited to experience what I'll be hearing.
A little bit nervous because I'm doing my first year in Form 1.
What are your goals? What are your goals, Sangena boys?
I want to reach the last grade.
I am excited at the same time nervous because it's like a new environment for me and but I hope I'll be welcomed warmly and I'll have fun in the school.
We can't wait to hear what we have. We can't wait to hear what the school has in store for us this year.
Yes, I'm very excited to be in school, back to school. Yes, yeah, we can't wait to learn. Yeah, because there've always been holdups, but hopefully now we're going on a straight path, and nothing shall interfere with education.
I'm really excited for today since we've been closed for like such a long time. We've been bored at home, okay, but our studying, trying to catch up with the syllabus,
Nanome bekulanga lecala lekuvula kwetikolwa labanye abatali bebasola bangakayitfoli indzawo yabantwana bagcwele etikolweni bafuna yona indzawo.
Njengoba kulilanga lekucala lekuvulwa kwetikolo tivulelwa umnyaka wa 2024, libandla letindzaba-ke livakashele etikolwa ikakhulu edolobheni eMbabane kubuka simo-ke esikolweni ngelilanga lekucala kutsi kuhamba njani. Nemambala sikhanze ukuthi kusaphitsitela nebatali-ke solo bakhona bayofunela abantu ababo indzawo njengoba nanoma-ke tikola setivuliwe kodwa-ke bakhona bantwana lesolo bede indzawo ngetizatfu letahlukahlukene. Sibakhulumisile-ke labanye abatali ukuthi ingabe kuhamba njani njengoba naku solo basetikolweni batawucela tindzawo tebantfwana.
Kungalahli ithemba abakasilahlike nabo lasikolweni bathethe basabuka tikhala emaklasini.
Kuyahleleka nje ukuthi nyalo kwe-hotan film zawo wabhala interview umntwana wayiphasa so vele uyitholile indzawo.
Lokusicaka kakhulu nje mbamalo sithi nebambane vele sibafaka emkhathini wetikolo. Asilungena grade 1 lo wami ngena grade 5.
Sibakhulumisile-ke nabotishela nhloko nanabo lese bashito-ke ukuthi tindzawo kude kugcwele etikolweni.
Sengikhathi sitawubona-ke lokho ukuthi labantwana ekuhambeni kwaleli viki ukuthi vele bagcina babuye bonke yini. So we cannot simply say abasekho laba sale sifaka lomunye. No, we need to wait for them until
batali bakhona vele Nkosi yami bagcwele kungasuka ukuthi bafike namuhla mane vele side lendzawo sesibachazela bathembeka ukuthi ke mhlawumbe kutawuba nalabo labathatha transfer cards labase bahamba nabo ngetizathu letehlukene baya kuletinye itikolo bese ke kuba ngilapho ke mhlambe bathola lokho lokuncane.
Batali-ke basi batawuchubeka bahlale ethembeni njengoba-ke abadi ukuthi inhlanhla iyawuvela nini kodwa-ke batawube solo baphokophele ukuthi bantu babo bathathwe kuleto tikolo labafisa ukuthi bathathwe kito kodwa-ke basi abadi-ke ukuthi kuyawuchubekani nasibabuta-ke ukuthi ingabe nathuke-ke vele bangabatholi noma-ke bangayitholi indzawo litsini licebo lelilandzelako basite-ke lelo cebo seliyawudakha lona. Etindzabeni ngingiyani Msibi nginavuma inkosi inzinisa naneliso ndlangamandla eMbabane.
Litiko letemfundvo lithi selicalile kumikisa kudla etikolweni noma kungasito tonke letikutfolile kwanyalo. Babhalane lomncane itiko letemfundvo Lungelo Nhlengetwa uthi liyakuthi liyawuphela leli viki lelitako tonke tikolwa titawube setikutfolile kudla.
La sikolweni mangaphosisi every day kuyadliwa. Kudla kuhlala khona uma kunjani sizame kuhwaya nasengungweni ukuthi bantwana bagcine badlile siyajabulela lokho kakhulu.
Libandla tindzaba-ke libute litiko letemfundvo ukuthi ingabe kuhamba njani kulolo hlangothi sekufikeleni kudla etikolweni.
Lokhu tikola tivulwa nje namhlanje kudla sekuyahamba ngile tikolweni. Le nkampani lesiyicashile seyivele yamikisa emabhontshisi, irice, ummbila netinye ethwala amafutha-ke kupheka. Sinalo lithemba lokuthi kutawuthi kungapheli mhlambe lenyanga letako mayicalako tibe kwaletiningi setikutholile lokudla.
Ingabe ndzabeni tincwadi tekufundza tona litiko selitimikisile yini?
Stationary sesisidilivile kwenye tiningi zetinaso stationary nyalo lanzi yatincwadi ikakhulu lapha eprimary kaye kulo kotaka FPE tikolo. So si on time vele siyasabela ukuthi tisheshe ticale kufundziswa lapha etikolweni. Lokusashoda mhlambe kucedzela kahle le mali yabo FPE noma offices. Nakhona sekuqale yasetshenziswa lokho siyakufaka kancane kancane kuze kuthi tikora tokhona kuba nemali yokuthi tisebenze.
Nhlengethwa uthi batawushakutela kumikisa tonke timfanelo letidzingekile etikolweni kude kusebenteke. Endzabeni kubeka Giyane Msibi ngisembabane.
Kunelijaha lokubika ukuthi lilahlekile lasendzaweni yaseNceka lelitfolakale selicala konakala. Umxhumanisi wamaphoyisa nesive ephindile Vilakati ubonga sive ngekubambisa emaphoyisa. Singakulokunye ulobole indzaba lesetinkhundleni tekuchumana lethi kunebantfu labafaka i-uniform yamaphoyisa emgwaco bagebe ngesive ebusuku batende emaphoyisa.
Qiniso msakati ukuthi indvodza lesike sayifaka kuwo amapheji ekuchumana igcine itfolakala lapha eNceka seyishonile. Sisachubeka ke simaphoyisa nalo liphenyo. Singabonga nje kuso sive kusibambisa sichubeke sicele ukuthi njalo nasine information lesicela kusive siyacela ukuthi sichubeke sobambisa emaphoyisa. Endzabeni yokuthi kunebantfu lesebavela babe njengemaphoyisa bathathe imoto asisicondzise ukuthi akusiyo noma ayisiyo ngalendlela lebekeka ngayo. Ikhona yona imoto lekwentekile ukuthi evikini leliphelile yathathwa kulomnye lenye jaha leneminyaka lengu-19 edolobheni eMbabane lapho khona wamiswa ngumuntu lebekagcoka ama-jackings ekwakha noma aka-construction. Wabe sesongena naletinye tigebengu khathi emotweni bamuka imoto yakhe noko leyagcina itfolakala ezulwini. Lokusho kona ukuthi bekungasilo liphoyisa nokuthi-ke mhlamba kade ivetanga njengalo liphoyisa ngaba nje ukuthi kumbe kuye loyo lowamukwa le moto wabona kwangathi kuya ngasephoyiseni. Singasho nje ukuthi sive asingasatshiswa lutho sikhuluma lamajaha akhona lesesinawo lesiwakhulumisako ngalendzaba yalokuganga lokufana nalokho.
Kutemidlalo inhlangano lengamele kudlalisa umdlalo we-table tennis ecale umsebenzi bekumikisa lo mdlalo kuto tonke tifundza telive. Inhlangano kulempela somvo beyivakashele isifundza saselibonjeni.
Likusasa lemidlalo table tennis libonakala litaba lihle lapha eveni kanti lenhlangano seyicale tinhlelo tekumikisa lo mdlalo kuto tonke tifundza telive. Lenhlangano kulempela somvo beyisesifundzeni saselibonjeni. Mengamelo lenhlangano phezulu uthi kusifiso sabo lesikhulu ukubona lo mdlalo udlala kuyo yonke imiphakathi yelive.
Msakati simenyiwe lapha simenywe i-Team Dakota. Team Dakota yakumathetha la endaselibonjeni. Sibuke ukuthi linyawo loluyembili kakhulu siyajabula nje kakhulu si-association lo ukuthi vele sifuna sigcina sifikile lemakhaya kuma-communities bayadi nale table tennis. Ikakhulu nje sifuna kufundisa la tikolweni letikhona lamakhaya. Abantwana labakhona bayasijabulisa ngoba siyaqala nje kuba khona nyalo but i-attendance yabo ema-juniors lesinawo nje nyalo angu-9. Siyacabanga ukuthi nasibuya next time ataba maningi kunalawo.
Kanti badlali bebengenelele imidlalo badumisa lenhlangano ngekubona isidingo sekuhambisa lo mdlalo etifundzeni.
Nalamakhaya kuyasebenzela ngoba labafana balamakhaya bakhona lokuthi babe organize. Yabo ngakubekisela nje. Labafana laba during the week. Ngiyakutshela noma ungathini ngabo 3-4 timbuti divalelwe mandakhiwe onke bonke bagcolela. Nabo ke bayafunza because asigcina lokudlala le table tennis kuphela. Sinawo lama activities.
Kuhle kakhulu. Ngijabula kakhulu ukubona i-youth ingenela lo mdlalo because iyasita kakhulu vele i-mental fortitude more than anything letsingekako kulo mdlalo we-table tennis. So vele nangibabona bakasola bamfana kuyangijabulisa.
Lenhlangano ithi timisele ukuchubekela esifundzeni saseshiselweni ekutameni ukuthuthukisa lo mdlalo khona kulesifundza. Lobikela umsakati Eswatini TV kutemidlalo ngilinda Dlamini kanti umbeke uhlanganiswe nguFabrice Msonera eMbabane.
Inhlangano lengamele ibhola kuleli Eswatini Football Association isihlelo lolatiwa ngekuthi i-Technical Development Scheme luhlose kutfola abadlali bakusasa bemakhethelo esive kubo babe kanye nabomake. Inhlangano ithi masinyane kunebaceceshi batawucala kuvakashela emacembu kuto tonke tigaba kuhlola abadlali labakhomba kuba nelikusasa lelihle.
Kunendzaba-ke ma-technical development activities lapho bekubuketwa ukuthi 2023 usebendeke kanjani. Ka-technical-ke siyati ukuthi nekufundisa khona abo-coach, kufundiswe bonombembe, kuhambe kubotweni zabo dabo women, buke insha youth, kubuke kudlala kwebhola ngekhathi etindlini esithi bo futsal, five-a-side. Kubuke nje naletinye inhlangothi ekuthuthukisa kwawo ibhola. Nako lokho kubuketiwe kwaphindze kwagcizelelwa ukuthi njengoba sesingene ku-2024 akungabi nje ukuthi sesiyahlanyela nje kuphela, kodwa sibuke ukuthi le nhlanyelo esiyihlanyelayo siyihlanyela ukuthi lesithi quality. Akungabi nekuthi baqeqeshi nasingabe yakubaqeqeshi nakasanyuka esigabeni lesiphasa ngetulo avele nje enyuswe abaqale bajike enkundleni bayosebenza practically bangakenyukeli ngetulo. Lokhu kutawakha ukuthi nalo lwathi labalitholile balisebenzise luphindze futhi kube nemabandla latawubekwa ukuthi akumonithe lokho ukuze ukuthi ukwazi basebenza. Sitawubabona nje kulo mnyaka batawavakashela ngisho amaqembu nakale phasi atijimela wona kuyobuka ukuthi uyaqeqesha yini vele lo mqeqeshi.
Dodo imidlalo sidibeka lapho tindzaba tetfu lomuhla sibahlethe makethe sitabe sichubeke.
What do you think the best part of traveling is? Is it the food, or is it the conversation, or is it the sights and sound? If you're ready to explore, we are ready to show you the best way how. We'll give you access to the best luxury getaway sites in the Kingdom of Eswatini, and of course show you vacation sites that suit your budget, because you do not need a lot of money to actually have a great time. Join us on the next adventure on Buhle Bethu, only on Eswatini TV.
It's 35 minutes after 6 asiphinze sinamukele ehlelweni sivetele nasiqala ihlelo ukuthi sitawuxhumana ne-senior journalist yethu LinkedIn Gule, who is corresponding from Uganda in Kampala, where His Excellency the Prime Minister Russell Dlamini has been representing His Majesty King Mswati III as well as the nation at the 19th Summit of Heads of State and Government of the NAM and the 3rd South Summit of Leaders of the G77 in China. So again, the G77 3rd South Summit is aimed at bridging the gap between rich and poor nations, as well as to level the playing field between the North and the South. Delegates from the world's developing nations have called for the development of a fairer global system that would take into consideration the struggles of developing countries. So again, they represent 80% of the world's population. LinkedIn joins us now. We want him to detail the recommendations proposed by the leaders there and how Eswatini will benefit from all of it. LinkedIn, welcome to the program. We are aware that His Excellency the Prime Minister is representing His Majesty the King at the summit. He has also shared on his own personal social media ekuthenini live lakangwane nanalo livumelana nayo le summit ekuthenini there is a need for stronger commitment and collective responsibility between the South as well as the North if we are to ensure that there is truly no one left behind. What are you picking, or rather what have you picked? Because I understand with sencisha senfika ngasemaphethelweni lapho kule gathering at the summit around stronger commitments and collective responsibility. Are all heads of states speaking in one voice? Kulolu hlangothi.
Siso asivusele nebabuli bemsakazo namhla ekseni uteka yona mhlonishana nankulu usimeleleke silo semhlaba emhlanganweni weNAM iNAM ngengile emave lawa langadingeni indzaba lamanye amave emhlaba ubanjwa ke lo mhlangano welishumi nemfica 19th Summit of the NAM kanti ke bakhona vele baholi base-Afrika labaningi babo uyakhumbula ukuthi 53 mava ase-Afrika malunga ayo le nhlangano yakaNAM nofaka khathi ke nemave lafaka khathi bo-Iran bo-Saudi Arabia nabo-Chile nalamanye nje angesheya kwetilwandle. Indzaba lenkulu siso nakukhishwa le Kampala Declaration emave onke akhulume ngalivilinye agceka ke sento se-Israel sekuhlasela live le-Palestine yakhumbula ukuthi yagada i-Israel ngemhla 7 enyangeni yeMphala eminyakeni lophelile sekufe nje abantu labafikako ngetulu kwa-200,000 kulembi lechubekako kulamave eGaza. I-Kampala Declaration icela ke imhlabuhlangene leyo ukuthi akento esiqiniseke ukuthi kune-ceasefire nelusito lu-humanitarian assistance iyafika khona lapha eGaza. Uyakhumbula ukuthi sikhuluma nje kumanje kunama-hostages lusito loluphelele alikhona ukufika eGaza ngendzaba tako lokulwa lokubomba kwe-Israel luchubekako. Bathi ke baholi lapha ngaphansi kwale NAM i-UN Security Council ayisebenzise phela i-resolution yayithatha ekuthenini imele empileni ukuthi ke kubuyelwe kunakuya ku-1967 uyakhumbula ukuthi nga-1967 mhlabuhlangene nanaye bekavele ancumile ukuthi live le-Palestine lilive nje litimele kepha-ke kwaseloko sekuyashintsha ithi ke iNAM ifuna ukuthi i-Palestine recognizwe as a state iphindze nayo ivunyelwe ukuthi participate tilihlanganweni takamhlaba nangemhlangano nje ka-UN. Uyakhumbula lo sinyalo i-Palestine is under i-UN is not recognized njengelive nje angibekise njengaseswatini ayirecognize ke kanjalo. Uthi ke iNAM sesifile isikhathi ukuthi iPalestine nayo recognize kanjalo Israel ime kuhlasela. Uthi thethe ke indzaba uMongameli Yoweri Museveni sifiso sekungeke sihlale wayo le nhlangano yeNAM tawuhola le nhlangano kude kube ngomnyaka wa-2027 satha ke kuMongameli we-Azerbaijan. Lokukhulu nje lokukhulunywa kabanti ngendzaba yase-Israel nenzaba ukuthi akube nema-reforms akube nema-reforms ku-UN Security Council bandla ka-UN libethe kuphepha. Uyakhumbula ukuthi nga-2005 kwaba nezulwini consensus yaqala khona i-African Union kuyikhuluma indzaba yokuthi akulungiswe i-UN Security Council ne-Afrika ibeleleke kahle. Uyakhumbula ukuthi nawubuka i-Afrika sifisa ubuka na mhlabuhlangene ama-members e-UN lamaningi emava se-Afrika but nawubuka i-representation njengoba sibekisa ngabo-UN Security Council ayimelele kahle i-Afrika. So ngalo 2005 lapho ekhaya le ndawo sezulwini ezulwini vele tasathiwa khona-ke lezulwini consensus lana-ke Kampala declaration iyakufaka lokuthi akubuyelwe kunayo ezulwini consensus ukuthi akube nema-reforms ku-UN Security Council. Iphinde-ke inami iyayesekela iNingizimu Afrika kule ndzaba leliqalo lelivulile enkantolo Criminal Justice Court ukuthi nembala vele kude le ndlela yekuzama ukuchaza lesento lesendekako lapha ePalestine ngaphandle kwekuthi lena i-genocide. Baphindze-ke baholi bateka nenzaba yetimali esifisha khumalo ukuthi siselele nje nangaphosi 5 to 6 years kusisiteka indzaba yalama SDGs 2030 nasetudane kuthiwa-ke phela amavele ase-Afrika akasekelwe ngetimali kude ukuthi atawucetha nje kuphuya. I think that is goal 1 or goal 2 kuliwe nehanga ku-improve indzaba yabo health. I-Afrika-ke ngenhlanhla lembe amavele amaningi adikhanza aku-debt crisis. Angibekise ngesimo nje bese lesendeka iZambia. iZambia yadikhanza ku-debt crisis ngendlela lesimangaliso kwadingeka ukuthi kwenziwe ama-reforms ukuthi ngabe lesikwenetu bangasikhona ukusibhadala njani. Kuthiwa-ke akubukeke lenye indlela ukuthi i-Afrika ithola njani imali kepha-ke letingeke kube into leyicinzetelayo. Angibekise nakwenziwa lawo ma-loans kubakala ukuthi abhadale kanjani kude ukuthi nembala lesicubu lesi leaving no one behind sikhona ukuthi si-achieve sisonke sifiso.
Ngithini ngisafuna sibuyele kancane kuna indzaba yema-multilateral and bilateral devastations la khona lapha emhlabeni leswabonako kulamalanga. I do understand ukuthi Antonio Guterres nanaye was part of lo msebenzi the summit and kungathi siyathwala ukuthi uyikondemnile indzaba ye-refusal ekutheneni accept the two-state solution for Israelis and Palestinians. Engabe athi tena ama-heads of state naka-reiterate noma highlighter lolo hlangothi lolo Guterres.
Sisoteka yona sibili I think le nawufunza le Kampala declaration iyavumelana na Guterres ukuthi akusebenziswe le two-state solution kuzama ukuthi kube nekuthula eIsrael. Unfortunately kuye kusinakiwa ku-UN Security Council hamba kuyawuvotwa votela lokuthi kuthathwe leso sigaba lesi live leMelika live lisolo liyaqhubeka nekumisa yonke imitamo lentiwa ngumhlahlangene ukuthi-ke kulethwe kube phansi ikhala ngisho njalo eGaza kuphindze ukuthi-ke kungene lisito eGaza kuke kwakhuluma mengameli wa Vice President waseCuba wathi uyamangala yena ukuthi ngoba phela le Western world bathi they are so-called civilized nations. Kesha yini lokubenta abahluleke ubona ukuthi i-genocide lena lendeka lapha eCuba ePalestine kungani beme nelive laka-Israel. I-argument yabo ithi live le-Israel nalihlaselwa iHamas belifanele nanalo ukuthi litivikele. Unfortunately kwendeka manje kulimala nebantu labanganaqala. Kuke kwakhuluma United Nations Assembly President wakuveta indzaba lebuhlungu ukuthi le-Israel isibhedlela sakhona abantwana bayajutshwa noma bajutshwa inyawo noma bajutshwa tandla lapho labalimele khona ngaphandle ukuthi mhlambe bajove ngale mijovo etawo ukuthi bangeva buhlungu ukuthi konke kwenta kubo nje bakwenta befa. Lesho nje sikafishane sifiso iKampala declaration ihambisana ngco nalolo lokushiwo ngu-Antonio Guterres. Unfortunately kunelipoint elivetwa ngumengameli wase-South Africa Cyril Ramaphosa ukuthi le UN kwayona nje ngazi ukuthi seyidzinga lokuthi ilungiswe vele naye UN Security Council sekuqalelwe phansi nje ngoba uthi they are inadequate abakhoni kulungisa tinsaya letibhekene nabo bonke abantu ungazi ukuthi balifica liso kulokunye bawahlahle emehlo. That's what he said.
Yeah, and I think me and you, LinkedIn, would really agree with Cyril Ramaphosa kulolo hlangothi lolo tikhwale to dihibe leto lesibona ngathi setsalela emuva. But LinkedIn kuna nayilo bese soyayitsinza nawusuka kuyo eGaza indzaba kwekuthi yes, of course, even our own Prime Minister took to his social media to highlight the challenges that hinder our developmental agenda, such as rising income inequalities. Waphinze wangeta nowekuthi kunebumqoka lobukhulu ekutheni kuthuthukiswe i-financial architecture letawusupporta onke emave, especially lawo la least developed. Perhaps you can detail the rising income inequalities la confronta live la kangwane in particular currently, and how this ambitious financial architecture could alleviate this situation.
Angibele naye emuva siso ngiqale la ekuthenini kunezinhlangano letikhona emhlabeni, kunabo IMF, kunabo African Development Bank la eAfrica, naletinye nje inhlangano ne Islamic Bank, inhlangano leti bambisa emave ngetimali etinhlelweni tawo tentuthuko. Bese kuba khona emave nakakhuluma President Yoweri Museveni nge-collaboration athi la mave lawa, when you look at the number, kuna 120 countries. Now ubuka nangale over 130 countries la ngale kule nhlangano ye G77 plus China. Utheke lamave lawa akabambisane odwa ukuthuthukisa tinhlelo tawo tentuthuko, ngaba tekulima, ngaba nikulwa nenzaba the impact of climate change. What is happening ngele bakhala ngako nglowe ukuthi usuka lamave labonsondo nzima lamave la njingi nangabe mhlambe kunaleyo loan layibolekele lo live lelo, le repayment structure ngiyokele kuthiwa ayilungise ngoba kwanyalo lamava ase-Africa aba indebted to these so-called big countries for a long time. Lokho bekulimatela ukuthi akasakhona ukuqhubeka nekulwa nendlala, nekulwa nephuya, nekuzama ukuthi nayi phela climate change is affect us sonke. Phinze bakhala ngalo ukuthi the climate change oba nawo inaka thina sifaka so little kwenta leyo ukuthi lesimo sibe sibi, but si affecteka kakhulu. Sibambise kanjani ke kulelo ndzaba lelo kahle kahle nje ngile global financing structure le basi asale ilungiswa ivumele iAfrica leyo ukuthi noma inikiwe le timali ayingakhanywa phela nasekufanele ukuthi imali itibhadala. I think basically that's what even the Prime Minister was saying ukuthi nasi lapha eSwatini kunanahlelo nje la lisukumisile uhulumende the SDGs rescue ukuthi sikhona uku-achieve the sustainable development goals onke mangi-70. Unfortunately indzaba ke kweswelakala kwetimali liqiniso lithi asikhoni, ngeke sikhone mhlambe vele uku-achieve konke lokho. Uyabuka siwentile umsebenzi lomuhle kutempilo ka-agriculture nakhona siyasebenza, nenzaba ye-education nayo ingilenye live lisebenzako, but iqiniso lakho lithi singasemave lathuthukile abambise iAfrica kuze ukuthi itawukhona uwa-achieve lama SDGs. Hence iAfrica icela ukuthi akulungiswe le structure salokutholakala nekubhadala kwale timali letinhlangano tikhona.
Quite an interesting recommendation there, LinkedIn, and I do see how it could really help the situation. Maybe kutsinza nje kuna ingcingwana lo sayitsinze kancane climate change. I want to be sure LinkedIn ukuthi kule agenda lekhona lapho ikhona indzaba ye climate change. Of course the world is facing this biggest global threat of climate change. Engabe, are there any recommendations lasabegiwe regarding green economies? Because like you highlighted, yes, we are now facing, or rather we are bearing the biggest brunt la khona ukhanza ukuthi emave lasathuthukile la industrializile sekabangela lidwadvasi kakhulu sekayibangile vele le climate change ukuthi ibe nge-situation lekuyo. What are the recommendations lokuvunyelwenwe ngayo lapho kuthini vele sale ilungiswa lenzaba lento? Because just like you said, LinkedIn, onke lama SDGs lawa ayathelelana nayo i-climate change, ngeke siwa-achieve isimo selitulu nasichubeka siba kanje.
Kunetikhwama sifiso leti ngiyakhumbula ngaSeptember lapha eRome nakune umhlangano wethabe usingabe kudla kungentiwa njani umhlaba ungenda njani kuze ukuthi ukhona ukukhipha ukudla lokwenene. Iyavela lenzaba ye climate change. Kwase kuyavela kusekukhona tikhwama letiphakanyisiwe leti tawusita emave ukuthi akhone mhlambe ukuthola leto dimali leto akhone ukulungisa lapho athika bete khona ngenzaba yayo climate change ngoba vele seyindlela sesiphila nayo. Kunamengameli waseKenya, mengameli William Ruto, uthi nakayikhuluma lenzaba phukhle magwebo sifiso leyo ukuthi kuyinhlanhla lembi leyo ukuthi le Africa idikhanza lala ikhona khona njengoba bengisho lesikude yona lenganani lekwendiwe la lokho emitha lawo mabases lawo lokufaka nemave yase Caribbean. Leona ke vele I think kuna president nje vice president waseCuba nalama island bo Papua New Guinea nalamanye bakhala ngokuthi bona le bathi thina labanye indaba ye-climate change siyayikhuluma nje ngoba mhlambe sibone tikhukhula sabona lishisa kakhulu bona bayibona kahle hle ngoba lento leyendekako yendekale kubo assignment yakho uyabuka igeography yakho ukuthi ithini lamave lawa la leBukhari bakhala ngalo ukuthi ke bathi abanikwa le mali ukuthi bakhone mhlambe kuba nalawo ma-adaptation mechanisms kunelive le-Seychelles isilive le-Seychelles nanalo lila e-Africa but lithathwa njengelive leli-developed likhala ngalo ukuthi nanalo lisihlenge silapha la khona lithi le impact ye climate change lona lingayichaza kangcono yet alivunyelwa lona ukuthi lihambe lithephe ini kuleto tikhwama leto letikhona ukuthi nanalo liqinise inhlelo talo kumelana nalokuguquka kwesimo selitulu basically nje kulenzaba climate change iAfrica iyavuma ukuthi iclimate change seyikhona ngeke solo siblemana ukuthi bani wendeni bani wendani however let us have access to ikhwameni letikhona tetimali ukuze sisitawukhona kubuka nje drip irrigation nasingakhuluma nzaba tekulima badzinga imali technology lefuna imali lena sifisa but ke nakuthi le imali sitawenda njani so iAfrica ithi nisifakile la sesikhona khona sivumelene nje sithole le imali basically ilapho nyane ukuthi ke Yoweri Museveni president uthi ke futhi ke sesifile lesikhathi lokuthi la mavela asathuthukile iAfrica isukume imelelane nawo angube kusele kusuka lamanye mave amemede ngelive elikhulu lapha eNingizimu Afrika nje for instance athi eNingizimu Afrika yekela kuphehla gesi usebenzise amalahle asinakacetha ukukhuluma lamave adonse licingo aode emalahle lamaningi eSouth Africa ekahamba yophehla ngawo gesi lekuthiwa unyubeta lemvelo so uthi ke Yoweri Museveni sikhathi ukuthi simelane nato letinto leti siAfrica.
Yeah, LinkedIn, I want us to go back a little bit enzabeni ye urgency to strengthen maybe global solidarity and international cooperations. Why are we going back there? Yes, you have highlighted inzabe kwekuthi seyikhulunyisiwe inzaba le ndeka eGaza, but you know the world as it is clearly going through devastating multilateral as well as bilateral challenges. Siyabona nalapha eAfrica, it is clearly hampering investments that can help stimulate sustainable economic growth as well as alleviating poverty. Ngiyatfola nje nangibuka nalacingweni lami masinyane ukuthi more than 35 armed conflicts in Africa. Engabe le microscope itile yini lapha nje kutawubuka la Africa ekuthenini yebo bekunene kukhona lokwentekako lapha eGaza, but let us not be remiss and forget about what is happening in Africa. If more than 35 armed conflicts are currently ongoing, Western powers or neighboring countries azama intervene etinzabeni tabo Burkina Faso, we at LinkedIn, Mali, you always report on some of these stories letentekako lapha Africa. What was discussed around that? Because I do want to remember ukuthi nalapha ekhaya silo semhlaba sayigcizeleni inzaba ukuthi guns should be silenced. What has been discussed around that topic?
President Yoweri Museveni uyithinze kakhulu isifiso uchaza inzaba ukuthi yes akubanjiswane kulamave the south and the north ababambisana. However lokwenda ukuthi Africa iphele kusalela emuva ngilokuthi inema conflicts nyalo sebata maketula umbuso nyalo sekune civil war uthi teke utawenda siqiniseko leyo ukuthi udonsa licingo esichairperson walenhlangano iG77 plus China ushayela bonke labalingani bakhe kulawo mave lawo la kunema conflicts khona kutama leyo ukuthi bathole likhambi lekuqedza leyo msindo loyo lokhona uveteke ukuthi akuphele ukuthi inyanga ukuthi iAfrica ivumele la mavela wala sathuthukile ku-imposer ukubitenge ukuthi the non-ideological philosophies nakakuchasa. So basically iAfrica iyavuma sifise ukuthi ine problem, ine crisis ngoba kunema conflicts kunanani but ke Yoweri Museveni uthi uyayiniketa iqiniseko iAfrica leyo ukuthi utakwenda umsebenzi wakhe esichairperson we-G77 plus China ukuthi ubashayela bonke North Mozambique nje Cabo Delgado nakhona kuyaliwa eDRC nakhona kune problem neSudan nayo ibikile ukuthi le lokula lokuse Sudan it's being financed elsewhere Akusiko nje ukuthi bakumane kwathi sukela nje kunebantu labangaphandle mavela amakhulu lafuna ukuthi kube ne-instability so that they can be able ukuthi bathathe umcebo lokhona e-Africa. So Yoweri Museveni uthembisile Sifiso ukuthi indzaba yama-conflicts e-Africa is going to deal nale ndzaba le.
From all the discussions that have taken place at the summit, kusiniketa lithemba nangemambala ukuthi intuthuko sitayibona ibangileyo le khonsako singayiboni nje kuphela iphindze ibangileyo le khonsako lapha ekhaya and Africa at large. Nje you can share just briefly, we did see the final story. I believe you'll be jetting off from Uganda and moving on to another development le ngidawucela ukuthi usisherishele yona masinyane, but before you get into that usivetelwe ukuthi sibikelele ukuthi umhlonishwa ndvuna ube sesewukhuthatha ubukhosi basebuganda even le Uganda ukuthi kuqhubeke phambise embili kuthula. We did see that story, just just a brief one on that trip yayitolo sinibonile nivakashela in some of their oil reserves nokuthi livela kangwane nanalo lapha ephuza umoya libukile ukuthi lisukumise imisebenzi kuleto nhlango stabo oil.
Very simple Sifiso, but le isikhathi sasemuva bo 14th century emuva kakhulu vele live le Uganda belifana nasi nje Eswatini kulive le coast Buganda kingdom bafika ke bomandla ngengwenya benda lokole bakwenda nakachaza lo prime minister wakhona uthi unfortunately for them laba bekunena bafika bebahluleka ubita lo B Buganda basinababhala tonke tindlo tabo bathi bafake nje ukuphela kwaseke sekuba Uganda but I think it's 1967 in the 1960s national independence Uganda i-constitution yakhona yabe recognize alobukhosi beBuganda kingdom but ke kwasephindze sekuyashiya so lokukhona nje manje ukuthi kukhona lobukhosi buya operate kunetindlu natembuso tabo busebenta tindzaba tabo but bude i-political power. So like show prime minister manje uthi bayayikhulumisa lenzaba uthi give us political power bashela uhulumende lomkhulu uthi ke bayethemba lokuthi batawukhona ukuthi bakususela sizo ikingdom lenkulu le lebantu abang 14 million labakha 16% wale population yala eUganda bane ma TV stations abo lokhosi njoba ubonile but okukhulu basime kakhulu emasikweni lapho ke nanje nankulafike ayidizelela khona indzaba ibambelela emasikweni lokuyawonda ukuthi ube nekuthula bachubeke ke baphuthuma teka yona indzaba Sifiso nje nankulutawusuka elangeni lalomhla ahamba yomelela ingonyama eveni leItaly leminyeke imihlangano lekhona yakamhlanga ngetabeni iqala on the 28th.
Yeah, and I believe that's in about 4 days. LinkedIn, we will surely take stock of that development as well. September ukuthi nakhona ndafe nibe na internet connection letaba good enough ekuthenini usiphe lama reports losipha. Thank you so much for your time. Asingakubambele liqhubeke ngelisuku lakho lomuhla. Have a good day out there in Kampala. You're an hour ahead of us. Sokuselivele liqalile sekuyakhanya lapho. Nathi ake siqhubeke nehlelo bonke sisibahlelo emakethe siqhubeke nehlelo masinyane.
We at Eswatini Television Authority are committed to observing the Eswatini Communication Commission's Broadcasting Code of Conduct.
Under the code, we are committed to broadcast news that is current, free from hate speech, accurate, balanced, and fair.
From politics to business, health, agriculture, courts, and global news, we bring you the latest updates as they happen, when they happen.
We cover all the sporting codes from the football pitch to the chessboards.
This is Eswatini TV News.
welcome back to the program. Just a minute before 7 this morning, we are about to take a look at our English news. His Excellency, the Prime Minister in Buganda, encouraged the Buganda Kingdom in Kampala to uphold peace and as a source of development. The Prime Minister was speaking during his visit to the headquarters of the Buganda Kingdom in Kampala.
The singing of the national anthem of Eswatini was a befitting welcome for the Prime Minister, His Excellency Russell Dlamini, at the headquarters of the Buganda Kingdom in Kampala, Uganda. The Prime Minister was received by his counterpart, Charles Mayiga. The Buganda Kingdom is ruled by King Kapaka Mutebi II. The Prime Minister was told that Uganda originates from the Buganda Kingdom. The country was called Uganda by the colonial masters since they struggled to pronounce Buganda. The Buganda Prime Minister says some time back they did visit Eswatini, where they were warmly received by His Majesty King Mswati III.
I wish you success in your endeavors. Being a Prime Minister is a challenging job anywhere in the world, but it's for a reason that you are the one in charge of that office. So we've got no doubt that your tenure will bear fruits.
The Prime Minister in his remarks encouraged the Buganda Kingdom to uphold peace and its cultural values, for without which they will lose their identity as a people.
We are evolving in terms of our governance system. So the king is out there, who's the head of state, and then we have the government that is elected by the people. We have the prime minister that is appointed, by the king, and everything works very well for us. That is why we are the most stable and peaceful country, in Southern Africa.
The Prime Minister was then showed a radio and a television station which belonged to the kingdom. The essence of these entities is to educate the people about their culture. The Prime Minister then visited one of the largest oil reserves in Uganda, where he was told that the plant produces 70 million liters of oil, while Uganda needs 14 million liters of oil per day. The Prime Minister informed the management and the workers that Eswatini will soon commence with the construction of a similar facility, and it does hope that they will learn from Uganda.
I'm here to learn because, as he has already said, we are interested that before the year comes to an end, we begin, to build a facility similar to this. Obviously, so we've seen how automated this whole facility is, and we are hoping that those who will be responsible to construct, a similar facility in our country will have an opportunity to come and see what you have done here. And who knows, maybe some of you will be requested to go and offer some assistance there.
Now that the Prime Minister has finished his assignment in Kampala, he will head to Rome to carry out his royal duties under the command of His Majesty King Mswati III. For Eswatini TV News, I am Lincoln Gule in Kampala, Uganda.
Passports will be available in all service centers around the country by the end of next month. In a press statement, the Minister of Home Affairs, Princess Lindiwe, says that she has personally went to the international supplier together with officials to ensure the production and shipment of the passports is fast-tracked. The Honorable Minister says the global outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic and travel restrictions led to the expiry. Damage and loss of some travel documents. She says the strengthened security in borderlines has affected informal and illegal crossings, leading to an increased demand in those wanting travel documents in an effort to evade arrests, which has led to an influx in applications. The Honourable Minister continues to say this shortage has prompted the ministry to control the limited stock by issuing passports exclusively at the headquarters for urgent and essential needs. The interim requirements are but not limited to the following: proof of doctor's appointment, acceptance letter from learning institutions, study permit, student card, hawker's permit, work permit, and or employment letter. The Honourable Minister says on the matter of allegations levelled against some officials being bribed to fast-track the issuance of travel document, nothing has been reported to the ministry's management. She urges the public to come forward and report such allegations, promising swift action. The Honourable Minister then assured the nation that the ministry will continue working diligently, upholding integrity at all times, whilst serving the public with full dedication. She requests the public's patience as the matter is being resolved. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Energy has said by end of this week the country will have made the necessary efforts to attain ULP 95 petrol. This has been said by the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Energy, Dorcas Dlamini, when explaining the shortage of this fuel in the country from Thursday last week in some petrol stations.
When we did our investigation, we found out that this is not our fault, but the company where we import fuel from, they hadn't renewed their contract to export fuel. So they couldn't export to us for the past few days, but they have promised us as a country that processes are being done so that the permit is renewed. And we believe by the end of the week, the situation will normalize.
We also asked the Principal Secretary on what the ministry is doing to prevent these unforeseen challenges in the future, as this is not the first time that the country has experienced similar shortages.
How can we avoid such incidents from happening in the future or in the near future? As long as a country do not have the strategic oil reserve, these problems will keep on encountering, because if we have the reserve, that's why we'll keep our fuel. And if such problems arise, our petrol stations, they can go to the Puzumoya where they can source fuel from.
The Principal Secretary says government is working around the clock to ensure that the country is self-sustainable in fuel to prevent such occurrences in future. For Eswatini TV News, Nelson Langamandla, Vuming Khosinzinisa Mbabane.
As per the 2024 academic calendar, schools opened on Tuesday and pupils were visibly excited to start lessons together with the first graders, who were happy to be amongst other learners with other confused about the whole mad rush. Some learners from schools that were visited by the Eswatini Television Authority on Tuesday morning shared their excitement about being ready to start with their academic year. On another, the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister Kusile, as well as the Minister of Education and Training, the Honourable Owen Ngumalo, have assured Eswatini that government will ensure timely payments of OVC and free primary education funds, as well as the distribution of books.
I think I'm just going to continue working hard on the subjects that I'm good at, and then on improving on the subject that I find difficulties in. I'm going to use past papers and maybe attend some online extra classes.
I was really excited to come here because I've been hearing a lot of things about high school, so I was excited. I'm just excited to experience what I'll be hearing.
A little bit nervous because I'm doing my first year in Form 1.
What are your goals? What are your goals, boys?
I want to reach the last grade.
I am excited at the same time nervous because it's like a new environment for me, and but I hope I'll be welcomed warmly and I'll have fun in the school.
We can't wait to hear what we can't wait to hear what the school has in store for us this year.
Yes, I'm very excited to be in school, back to school, yes. We can't wait to learn, because there've always been hold-ups, but hopefully now we're going on a straight path and nothing shall interfere with education.
I'm really excited for today since we've been closed for such a long time. We've been bored at home, but our studying, trying to catch up with the syllabus,
Some parents were still looking for admission places for their children in various schools on Tuesday. The news crew visited some schools around Mbabane.
The news crew visited different schools around the capital city on Tuesday on the first day of the opening of schools. Even though schools had opened, some parents were still queuing looking for admission places for their children. Some say these are their preferred schools since they offer quality education.
Abakasilahlike nabo la sikoleni bathethe basabuka tikhala emaklasini.
Kuyahleleka nje ukuthi nyalo kuyodana imfundo zawo wabhala interview umntwana wayiphasa so vele uyithole indzawo.
Lokusicaka kakhulu nje mama lokusithi nibambane vele sibafaka emkhathini yokuthi kodwa asilo ngena grade 1 lo wami ngena grade 5.
The head teacher said there's no longer space available. They have addressed the parents on that.
Sengikhathi sitawubona ke lokho ukuthi labantwana ekuhambeni kwaleli viki ukuthi vele bagcina babuye bonke yini. So we cannot simply say abasekho laba sale sifaka lomunye. No, we need to wait for them until
Batali bakhona vele Nkosi yami bagcwele kungasuka ukuthi bafike namuhla. Mane vele site lenzawo sesibachazela. Bathemba ukuthi ke mhlawumbe kutawuba nalabo labathatha ema transfer cards labase bahamba nabo ngetizathu letehlukene baya kuletinye itikolo.
Some parents say they will not lose hope. They will wait for the better part of the week. They are changing schools because of various reasons, including new jobs. For Eswatini TV News, I am KNMCB with Vuminko Sinzinisa and Nelson Dlangamandla, Mbabane.
The Ministry of Education has started delivering food in most schools, though not all for now. The Under-Secretary in the Ministry, Lungelo Nhlenge, says by the end of the next week, food will be delivered in all schools around the country.
La sikolweni mangaphosisi every day kuyadliwa. Kudla kuhlala khona. Uma kunjani sizame ukuhwaya nasengungweni ukuthi bantwana bagcine badlile.
The Ministry of Education says food has been delivered in some schools as part of the school's feeding program for this academic year.
Lokutikula tivulwa nje namhlanje ukudla sekuyahamba kungile tikolweni. Lenkampani lesiyicashile sevele yamikisa emabhontshisi, rice, ummbila.
The Undersecretary in the Ministry of Education, Lungelo Nhlenge, says they will be delivering in the remaining schools during the course of the week as well as next week. He also answered the question of whether stationery has been delivered.
Stationery is delivered kwenye tiningi, zetinaso stationery. Nyalo lanzi yathi incwadi ikakhulu lapha eprimary kaye kulo kota FPE tikolo.
He says they will speed up the process of delivering schools essentials so that schools are able to function. Reporting KNMCB, Mbabane.
A missing gentleman of Mnega area has been found dead with the body starting to decompose. The Chief Police Information and Communications Officer, Pindile Vilagati, applauds the nation for assisting the police on this matter. On another note, she corrected a message being seen on social media of certain men disguising as police officers, wearing traffic police clothes, holding roadblocks at night. Deva residents say there's a hippo terrorizing them and damaging their maize fields. They now fear for their lives because of the hippo. And on international news, the Israeli army said on Tuesday that 24 soldiers were killed in the biggest single-day losses since the start of its ground war in Gaza, amid growing pressure on the government to find a way to end the conflict. Here's a report.
Dozens of Israeli soldiers were killed between Monday and Tuesday, marking the highest one-day Israeli death toll since ground operations began in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military said the troops were demolishing buildings near the Israeli border town of Kisufim in order to create a buffer zone between Gaza and Israel. Some were killed when an RPG hit a tank. At the same time, an explosion struck two buildings.
The buildings collapsed as a result of this explosion, and most of the troops were inside and nearby. The explosion was probably due to mines planted by terror infrastructures before our troops had arrived in the area.
The deaths come in the middle of an Israeli offensive to capture nearby Khan Yunis, where Israel says senior Hamas commanders could now be hiding. The violence included strikes near Al-Nasser Hospital, one of 15 hospitals still functioning in the Strip. This caused thousands of people to flee the city, many of which had already fled fighting in the north.
Where do we go? This is the 17th time I've left my home. Where should I go? Should I go to Rafah? Rafah is all one street. What do they want from us?
Many of Gazans' 2.3 million residents are crammed into public buildings and tent cities in Rafah at the very south of the Gaza Strip. The United Nations says that more than 500,000 people in Gaza, a quarter of the population, are starving.
6 people were killed and dozens wounded after a wave of Russian missiles targeted Kyiv and other cities across Ukraine, setting residential buildings ablaze and reducing others to rubble.
Ambulance sirens, shattered glass and fragments of what used to be people's homes. This is the aftermath in Kyiv after Russian missiles targeted the Ukrainian capital on Tuesday morning. And these residents are now forced to evacuate.
I have an old grandmother, so I can't just leave her behind and flee. So we hid in the corridor. There was an explosion, the walls shook and the glass broke. We were terrified. Then we were told to leave our building, so we're going to have to stay with friends for now.
Officials say the aerial onslaught included over 40 ballistic, cruise, anti-aircraft and guided missiles. Over in the northeast, in Ukraine's second biggest city, Kharkiv, another barrage of airstrikes took place that officials say wounded scores of civilians and wrecked around 30 residential buildings in sub-zero temperatures.
When the missile attack started, I kneeled down near the washing machine and look, some glass hit me here. I'm alive, but people died and my flat is gone.
The attacks come just days after Moscow's officials in eastern Ukraine claimed Kyiv's shelling on Russian-occupied Donetsk killed 27 people, though Putin's press secretary denied it was retaliatory.
We continue our special military operations, and our military doesn't hit civilian facilities and residential areas. It does not hit civilians, unlike the Kyiv regime. This is what radically distinguishes our military from the military of the Kyiv regime.
Ukraine's military, however, has denied any involvement in strikes in Donetsk, as its government calls to its Western allies for more advanced air defense systems to cope with the aerial attacks on its civilians.
US and British forces carried out a fresh round of strikes on Monday in Yemen, targeting a Houthi underground storage site as well as missile and surveillance capabilities used by the Iran-aligned group against Red Sea shipping, the Pentagon said.
Explosions rocked the capital of Yemen in the early hours of Tuesday morning. The Pentagon said that American and British forces carried out an 8th round of strikes, targeting Houthi surveillance capabilities and an underground storage site.
These strikes are intended to degrade Houthi capability to continue their reckless and unlawful attacks on US and UK ships, as well as international commercial shipping in the Red Sea, Bab al-Mandeb Strait, and the Gulf of Aden.
For 2 months, the Iran-backed Houthis have attacked Red Sea shipping routes with drones, missiles, and speedboats. Their attacks have disrupted global supply chains and stoked fears of increased prices for goods. Multiple rounds of strikes over the past month have failed to stop the attacks, as U.S. intelligence officials estimate that they may have only destroyed about 30 to 40% of the Houthis' offensive capacity. Indeed, the most recent strikes came less than a day after the Houthi military claimed responsibility for an attack on an American ship that it said was carrying military cargo.
Our armed forces emphasize that responses to American and British transgressions will inevitably come. Any new transgressions will not go without a response and punishment.
No organization operating in the region acknowledged the attack, and the U.S. military said the Houthi claim was likely false. The Houthis control the most populated areas of Yemen and have been rallying local tribes to fight in response to Israel's offensive in the Gaza Strip. Nonetheless, they have frequently targeted vessels without clear links to Israel.
Turkey's parliament is widely expected to approve Sudan's NATO membership bid on Tuesday, clearing the biggest remaining hurdle to expanding the Western military alliance after 20 months of delays.
It was when Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022 that Sweden dropped its policy of military non-alignment and applied to join NATO alongside Finland. Almost 2 years later, Sweden could be on the cusp of officially becoming a member. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has long opposed the country's entry, demanding it first crack down on Kurdish and other political dissidents that he views as terrorists.
If terrorist organizations such as the PKK and their affiliated structures are able to continue their demonstrations on the streets of Sweden, if they're able to recruit staff and access financial resources, then the change in legislation has no meaning for Turkey.
Last year, Sweden passed an anti-terrorism law and jailed a man for funding the Kurdistan Workers' Party. In July, Erdogan finally agreed on getting the process started, saying he'd forward a bill to ratify Sweden's NATO accession to Parliament.
I'm very happy. The three of us, the President of Turkey and the Secretary General of NATO and myself have shaken hands over this joint statement. We are thus taking a very big step towards the formal ratification of Sweden's membership in NATO. It has been a good day for Sweden.
Erdogan has also said he expected the US to simultaneously approve the sale of F-16 fighter jets to Turkey in exchange for its green light on Sweden. Ankara's approval would leave Hungary as the last holdout, Prime Minister Viktor Orban having linked its consent to Turkey's position.
Australia imposed cyber sanctions on a Russian man for his role in the breach at insurer Medibank, one of the country's biggest data thefts, which impacted about 10 million customers.
This is the face of a man accused of being behind one of Australia's most devastating cyber attacks. On Tuesday, the government released these photos of Alexander Ermakov. The Russian national is believed to be responsible for one of the country's worst data breaches, which leaked information from millions of customers of private health insurer Medibank. Australia also announced it was imposing unprecedented cyber sanctions on Ermakov, subjecting him to financial sanctions and a travel ban.
These people are cowards and they are scumbags. They hide behind technology, and today the Australian government is saying that when we put our minds to it, we will unveil who you are and we will make sure that you are accountable.
The government also said that Ermakov was a member of the international crime syndicate, R-Evil. It's the first time he's been publicly identified after Australian authorities linked him to the breach. The 2022 attack stole personal data from 9.7 million customers of Medibank, one of the country's largest private health insurers. After the company refused to pay a multi-million-dollar ransom, hackers started publishing records on the dark web. Some of the leaks targeted highly sensitive records related to drug abuse, pregnancy terminations, and HIV diagnoses. Reports of cybercrime in Australia have surged over recent years, prompting the government to toughen up its cybersecurity laws. Stamping it out will be no mean feat, though. According to a government report released in November, hackers have ramped up assaults on Australia's businesses, homes, and critical infrastructure, with one attack every 6 minutes likely occurring.
EU agriculture ministers will discuss how to resolve European farmers' growing discontent as Brussels scrambles to address the issue ahead of elections this year. Europe's farmers are in revolt. The fury has led to road blockages and tractor parades in the past few weeks, with farmers taking their protests to the streets in France, Germany, Poland, and Romania after the Netherlands earlier.
These Romanian farmers have been camping out in their tractors and lorries for almost 2 weeks. Despite the bitter cold, they are striking over a long list of concerns and are determined to have their voices heard.
The taxes have all gone up. Diesel prices are high. Materials used in agriculture are very expensive. We haven't been able to pay for them. We also have debt.
In Romania, as in France and Germany, tax increases have weighed heavily on the farmers. They're demanding lower taxes and fairer government subsidies. And in addition to inflation and the energy crisis, there is another cause for concern. Farmers face competition from Ukrainian agricultural products coming into the EU due to customs duties being lifted 2 years ago. The European Green Pact, which aims to set the EU on a path of green transition, includes the reduction of pesticides, a policy which severely affects farmers' agricultural work. At the Berlin Agricultural Fair, the German Chancellor promised to simplify administrative procedures.
Most of them want to work in the field, for example, in food processing. They don't want to spend their time dealing with bureaucracy.
The farmer protests are putting pressure on Brussels in the run-up to the European elections in June, something which EU ministers are taking very seriously, since surveys show a surge of the far right and nationalists. This will be followed by a strategic dialogue with the farmers on Thursday, aiming to defuse the crisis.
As Russia gears up for presidential elections, former liberal lawmaker Boris Nadezhdin has emerged as an unlikely candidate for peace ahead of the vote. Now, thousands of Russians across the country have been lining up to register his name to challenge President Vladimir Putin at the ballot box in March. Should he gain enough signatures to stand, he will be the only candidate opposed to the war in Ukraine.
He is one of Putin's rare opponents. Thousands of Russians from Moscow to Yekaterinburg and Irkutsk have been lining up to support Boris Nadezhdin's bid ahead of the presidential election in March. Under Russian law, Nadezhdin must collect 100,000 signatures by the end of January to be allowed to run. A liberal, pro-Western, anti-war former member of parliament, Nadezhdin is an exception in a country where almost all opponents to the invasion of Ukraine have fled the country or been imprisoned.
The most important thing that's happening now in our country is the conflict in Ukraine. And Nadezhdin seems to be someone who intends to resolve this conflict, to stop this conflict. I want to believe it.
I would like there to be some kind of alternative, because everyone else has the same agenda.
This is an opportunity to send a message to the government. In any case, our signatures will be noticed, I'm sure of it.
On Tuesday, Nadezhdin's website read that although he'd already gathered over 100,000 signatures, he needed some 48,000 more to successfully register because he couldn't submit more than 2,500 from each region. Even that would not guarantee his place on the ballot because electoral authorities routinely find reasons to disqualify candidates. Vladimir Putin's campaign team, meanwhile, claims to have already collected more than 2 million signatures.
Such unanimous support from the people is very important for our candidate. We're together and we will win together.
So far, 3 candidates have been approved for the ballot, none of whom stand a realistic chance of winning against Putin.
Now, Liberia's new president, Joseph Boakai, pledged to fight corruption in the West African country as he was sworn into office on Monday following his election victory over former football star George Weah.
Freshly sworn in as Liberia's new head of state, Joseph Boakai already has his work cut out. The president will hope to redress a flailing economy and tackle widespread poverty in a country where over half of the population lives on less than $2 a day.
I know what this country needs. I know what this economy can turn around.
During his campaign, Boakai vowed to improve access to clean water and electricity, create jobs, and lower the prices of essential products such as rice and fuel. He also pledged to improve infrastructure and build new roads, especially in the country's long-neglected south. But in order for these reforms to bear fruit and truly benefit the needy, Boakai will first need to address endemic corruption in Liberia, an issue which all of his predecessors vowed to tackle, yet the new president, who's promised a radical justice and security reform, hopes he can succeed where others failed. Boakai will be able to call on his experience and record. During his 40 years in politics, including 12 as vice president, he's managed to steer clear of corruption-related scandals. But time could also be working against the 79-year-old, who appeared visibly weakened during his swearing-in ceremony.
In sports news, the Eswatini Table Tennis Federation is in a process of taking the sports out of the Mbabane-Manzini corridor. This past weekend, the association took a trip to the Lubombo region as part of the association's program to expand the sport in the country. On another one, Chief Executive Officer of Eswatini Football Association, Frederick Mgometulu, says the Technical Development Scheme program known as TDS, which was introduced last year, where talent players are recruited around the country, junior tournaments will serve in selecting the future stars of the national teams, both in the male and female category. Mgometulu was speaking during a media briefing at Sikwaqa House in Mbabane. That's it for our English news. We'll look at the weather focus, go for a net break, and return shortly.
This weekend is Eswatini, your official weekend party starter. Tune in for the best of entertainment. We're bringing you the hottest music videos and live studio interviews with your favorite celebrities. We're giving you a front row seat to the latest fashion trends as well as your weekend gig guide. Join us live on social media and call in to send your shout-outs. Be sure to catch our movie segment where we review and give updates on all latest movies. Catch This Weekend Eswatini every Friday at 5:30 p.m. live on Eswatini TV.
Hello everyone and welcome to the show. You know the vibes, it's the beat down. The time is 8 p.m. It's time for you to relax, sit back, relax, and enjoy the music videos that I got for you.
Welcome back. Nasingena ehlelweni ukuthi sidaba sikhuluma nge-International Day for Education. 4th of January as the International Day of Education in celebration of the role of education for peace and development. Kanti ngekusho kwenhlangano UNESCO lamuhla 250 million wabantwana abekho esikolweni and 763 million adults abakhoni kufunda pheze futhi abakhoni nekubhala. Umgomo wesine wakamhlaba yemigomo lekhonsako ugcizelela yona indzaba yokubaleka kwemfundo lilinganako nelesezingeni lelifanele. Senginaye lapha Secretary General usokhona UNESCO Eswatini Lwandle Simelane uchazela kabanzi on the progress made towards quality education targets in Eswatini and also nje challenges labhekene nayo imfundo noma ke quality yemfundo lapha Eswatini. Asevusele sabangalonto ukuthi ube nasi lomhla ekseni. I think it's an important day lomuhla, particularly kubuka ukuthi itolo bekuvula tikolo lamuhla sekugujwa lelanga leli International Day for Education. Libaleka ngana nje lelanga leli, why are we commemorating it?
Thank you so much. Ngivusele nembukeli ekhaya.
The International Day of Education is very paramount. Ubuka nje ukuthi bumqoka bemfumvo. Education is crucial for development and also to embrace diversity. Given that this year's theme is learning is learning for peace. And what does that mean? It means we need to embrace diversity. We need to understand that education, firstly, is a public good, is a human right. Everyone has a right to education. Education gives you the ability to decide, to make decisions. It changes your mindset. Hence, it is crucial for development. And this year's theme, Learning for Peace, actually embraces seeing that there's a huge, there's a high level of hate speech, bullying, and social media, misinformation. Hence, we need to really educate ourselves. Education is the cornerstone of development.
Yeah. So what is your role as UNESCO, in regards to education, to ensure quality and inclusive education? Ukuthi vele ama standards mhlambe lelo livelelo liyawalandzela akamhlabhlangene.
So UNESCO is a specialized agency, and I'm glad you asked that, because most of the time we are viewed as a funding agency, and yet we are a development partner. UNESCO in the mathematic areas, which are education, science, and culture, information and communication. So United Nations has the advantage of reaching out to all the countries, and the ability to have the input towards these standards that we use, education for sustainability. Recently, we have the recommendation for education for peace, which is the blueprint of how we should conduct our education. If you look closely, it's globalization. We are becoming one, given that the internet is there. Hence, the UNESCO is the one that helps in making these standards. But it is up to the countries to take it up. We have to show a certain level of commitment. From
So we are adhering to the standards by UNESCO as Eswatini.
Interestingly, yes, we are. We recently reviewed the TVET policy. We have the strategy for education. I hope Babu Gelinje Bayasati, because we all have the responsibility to understand our role in the education ecosystem. We all have a responsibility.
So let's talk more about the progress made towards, attaining goal number 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Set ukuthi vele khuluma ngayo equality education. Lokuthi by 2030 nifisa ukuthi vele sibe Eswatini si-achievile. Are we on the right path? Nasibuka, susukela nje emuva 5 years back.
We are definitely on the right path, given that UNESCO nje sekune early childhood and development, and Eswatini is taking that up really strongly. And there recently has been a study where they looked at preschools and the important numerical data yaseswatini letshengisa ukuthi uqala umntwana semncane ligotshwa lusemandi, ensuring that the foundation is strong. There's also the TVET policy that I talked about, which speaks to the skills. There's recently been the strategy, Yaga Education. We are definitely working towards that. And recently, UNESCO has funded the Greening School, a curriculum which teaches climate change, and it embeds it into the lessons, because really we need to talk about climate change and the relationship between men and the environment. So we are definitely on the right track. We are igniting the conversations, and we are developing the right tools. I strongly believe we are definitely doing the most for SDG 4 and target 4.7, which means by 2030, all students must be in school.
Yeah. So what happens nasifika 2030 and still nibonga ngathi we're lagging behind? There's so many things mhlambe letisalago. What then happens? Mhlambe kungaba ngibe nje tinyathelo leningatithatha as United Nations.
Like I said, it's important as a country that we invest in these things. It's important that we make the effort. Of course, Gunema monitoring and evaluations, which then the evidence will tell us what steps we need to take where we fell short. So what's crucial for us is to actually collect the data so that we know where we are falling short, what needs to be done in the next stage. We've seen it in the African Union, the first stage of Agenda 2063. We went back and we looked, where are we failing countries? Are countries committed enough? And we are fixing it in the second phase. So we cannot preempt what needs to be done now, having not seen what the evidence is telling us, because nothing is as it seems. It's quite crucial to have that.
Okay, I mentioned on my intro it's over 250 million children in the world out of school, and over 700 adults are illiterate. Ingabe isalaphi vele mhlambe kusiniketa nje sithombe ukuthi ingabe what is the situation here in Eswatini?
Of course, inginga emhlaba wonke. Inginga emhlaba wonke, particularly in Africa, given that we are a young population. Kukhona-ke lebathi i-leaky pipe, and I'll talk about especially the women. They get lost in the system, and that's one of the areas we're concentrating in, from SADC to the AU to UNESCO. Iyasala in terms of nabo digital divide come to play, teenage pregnancies, economical disparities. And this is where we need to understand that it's not just it's a responsibility of the Minister of Education. It's actually, we need to apply systematic thinking, whereby we view the whole system and understand that we can solve our education, but our social welfare, so we need to apply the system thinking processes. So hence I said we are all involved. UN alone cannot solve all the problems. You as an individual have a responsibility. The station has a responsibility to impart education, to impart knowledge. Because knowledge poverty also is another thing that really causes people not to even know what the opportunities are out there. Talent, but they don't know where to go with it. So it's a lot of things that need to be done, but it cannot be solved by one entity or one institution.
You touched on teenage pregnancy. Do you have a lot of those teenage rate of dropouts due to pregnancy and any other issues? And kutawubanga ukuthi vele lokho kusibuyisele emuva kule quality education lesiphokophele kufika kiyo by 2030.
Ikona kakhulu teenage pregnancy. I actually recently had a conversation whereby we spoke about the perpetrators, because sometimes we do focus on just the teenage pregnancy. However, the teenage pregnancy in Eswatini is very alarming, and it's of grave concern, and it does affect the future of these young girls, because some of them have to really drop out to take care of the children, and those are the things that we I don't have the specific statistics right now, but I know it's of grave concern, and it's something that we need to look into. And of course, we need to also punish the perpetrators. You're affecting a child. It's actually, I would call it rape, if anything.
Perpetrator uyachubeka esikolweni, but lo pregnant yena kumele a drop out esikolweni and take care of the child.
I'll go back to saying that it's the country's commitment. It's definitely, it boils down, because the standards are there. We contribute, we attend the conferences, we attend the meetings, and we contribute towards the standards, and it's up to us. It's our prerogative to see it through. So we need to, as a Swatini, to step up when it comes to that. And we are doing quite well with the SODV Act. I think that's a huge step forward to curb this such incidences.
So for us to be able to move out during COVID times, way back in 2020, 2021, there are a lot of inconsistencies in the education system, because bantwana bebabili esikolweni benze futhi bayekele. Ingabe lokho kube khona yini some sort of impact on the education system nayo le quality education nje?
I'd like to think of it as by opportunity. on our part. Of course, a lot of things we were unprepared, firstly, but it was a lesson. But I guess we'll be more prepared. And most of the time, I think it was a shock to the world, and we didn't know how to work around it. So of course, students were affected, but I strongly believe the Ministry of Education really put in the effort in trying to ensure that the students continue learning. So abonile ma lessons go TV, so abonile radio. That was innovative. We saw online education. So I don't want to say nothing was done. A lot was done. And I feel like we should look at it as an opportunity to be more innovative and really take advantage of the technology. Because we don't know what the future holds, more pandemics. We truly don't know. So it was a lesson. If we look at it as a lesson, then we learned something and we are more prepared, more innovative. We understand the importance of soft infrastructure. We understand the importance of technology and why we need to bridge the technology divide.
Yeah.
So lessons on lessons.
Right. I think nasabuka nje mhlambe ama-achievements la endiwa nguhulumende and also Minister of Education kuzama nje ukuphusha for quality education. I think lokunye ngaba free primary education. Nguphi mhlambe lonye lova khona ukuthi ngazothi uhulumende ukhonile kusebenza uqinisekisa ukuthi goal number 4 vele siyafika kuye by 2030, including the free primary education.
Yeah. That is a huge milestone. And also nalokungena kulama areas la less served, for lack of a better word. Hulumende nje usebenzile kakhulu to track unyalo nje kune system yeku track ama students, which is so crucial. I feel like that's so much progress. We know ukuthi bangaki bamfla enrollile. We know ukuthi bangaki bamfla why high school bancipha. I feel like that's improving also the quality of education. And also in terms of, we have teachers, young teachers who are innovative. I've worked with them, especially in the ICT sector. I feel like that's an improvement. The realization of the technology, to inculcate it into the education. Emuva besingakwadi batakutshela labanye ukuthi computer ngiqale kuyibona semvasi. So I feel those are steps forward. We're definitely moving forward in terms of achieving SDG 4, improving the quality of education. And there's more coming up. Please look out for that. Hopefully, but initiatives are better placed to impart that.
Yeah. So I think that there are challenges as well. Mhlambe la solo akona within the education sector. Indzaba nje ukuthi labanye bamfana, particularly lemakhaya, solo bahamba long distances nabaya esikolweni, and some of them vele they live in poverty. Kude kahle nema uniform, netinkinga nje letinye solo tibhekene nabo. Ingabe vele mhlambe what could be done kuzama address those issues? What would be your response be as UNESCO?
My response as UNESCO and as a person would be understanding that it's an ecosystem. It's such a huge responsibility. Kubuhlungu kakhulu kukhona bamfana vele some even drop out because le mali yebhasi seyiba khulu. However, I know the DPM is working with UNICEF, I know, and the Ministry of Education, and they're looking into la kshota khona mitigate the tikolo lapha nalapha. However, it's an ecosystem really. It's a difficult question to answer, honestly, but it's just understanding that the private sector must come to the party. Government must come to the party, NGOs must come to the party to work towards developing and ensuring that no one is left behind, no child is left behind. It's a responsibility. If it's not just UNESCO's responsibility, UNESCO can should commit to certain things, but what are we as a country, doing is what matters the most and is what is more sustainable.
Yeah, I think this moving on to Guma tertiary, institutions, both vocational training. Ingabe nakhona lapho uhulumende has she done enough, kuzama ku improve the system.
That's the conversation right now. Kufundzisa skills. I mentioned we recently reviewed the TVET policy, and more is coming in terms of implementing that policy. So look out for that. I think that's one of the most, you mentioned the number of adults that are not in school, that are out of school, that are dropouts, that can't read and write. Skills. The future must skills. And we have a better understanding of that. Because education, we cannot limit education to a classroom, honestly. We cannot limit to teacher, student. There's so many ways to impart it, but we need to mainstream it. Yeah.
So there are learners this year lined up their final year in high school, and they do not want to further their studies. Education is just a waste of time. When I'm business abo, why is it important ukuthi baqhubeke nemfundo as namhla sicommemorate lona vele langa sikhuluma nje ngayo education kubaleka ngani vele ukuthi uqhubeke ufunde utoba nelwadi oluningi.
Kwabona lokuqala nje business. You have to have knowledge. You have to have information. So for me, I would say go on and study that business. Network, university again network. Most people bafunzile but baqala ama business abo through their networks. So please go to school. If the opportunity arises, do not take it for granted. Take it with both hands. It's better to have that certificate than not to have it and need it.
Yeah.
So please go to school. The opportunity arises. Hambo funza, ufunzeli business yako. We are not discouraging it. We encourage business very, very much, but we also encourage education.
And are those as well abathatha igap year bevangazothi badinga umnyaka, just to think things through, but decide which courses are they going to take. Ingabe nako lokho do ngiyak advise ngiyasida invele for umfundi ukuthi vele sekahlale abuke ukuthi kahle kahle ufuna kwenda ini angatoza akhethe career le wrong.
Kumcwa kakhulu ke I speak of informed decision making. If you feel you udinga igap year kucabangisisa kahle, use it. But it's useless if you will take the gap year and not do the research and not meet the right people and not gather information to decide. So I definitely would encourage people, you know what, I need to take a step back. Because many people find themselves in the wrong career. But what I advise is don't just sit in a gap year. Inquire, acquire new knowledge, encounter people, network. Find your interests really.
Maybe do short courses,
do short courses, yes.
Courses. Also those they help.
Yes. Actually, I would encourage every year learn a new skill, learn to have a new certificate. There's so much. You will perish if you don't learn. Yeah. You will perish if you don't acquire new knowledge. The world is changing so quickly. So if you are not acquiring new knowledge, skills, I don't know what to tell you.
Speaking of adults, it's adult literacy. Ingabe vele yona la Eswatini sime kuphi nayo siyabonga ukuthi isebenta wabakhona bavulela amathuba for abantu abatsala ukuthi nabo bafunze. Ingabe kusita kangakanani vele ukuthi vele kube nama institutions alolu hlobo kuze nabantu abatsala nabo balifule thuba ukuthi babe literate.
Kumqoka kakhulu. You are never too old to learn. That's one thing I can say. You are never too old to learn, and it's such an amazing initiative. And we are now also funza somdzala. So funza ngisho usebenda. It becomes more impactful because you have seen the world.
Yeah.
And they are better placed actually to tell you usambo funza. Mina ngimdzala, ngifundisa ngimdzala. We are born. It's crucial. There's never a lost cause in acquiring knowledge or a new certificate. Whether you're in your 50s, whether in your 60s, uyofunza something.
Okay.
That's how your mind, you become a better human, you become better to interact with. I encourage it strongly.
Okay, lastly, are there any activities as UNESCO, in commemoration for International Education
Well,
Day?
unfortunately, this year we won't be commemorating in terms of a celebration. We are commemorating the day. We acknowledge the day. So unfortunately this year, but please look out for next year.
All right.
Yeah,
Definitely
please look out for
next
next
year.
year.
Okay, thank you so much.
And learn for peace.
Yeah.
Embrace diversity. We are all different, but we are one.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much for joining us, Landla Mugeli. Equality education, particularly progress that has been made in achieving goal number 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Likhuluma ngayo imfumvo esezingeni elifanele kanye nemfumvo lephakeme. Let's take a break. Sitawubuya sitawuvala hlelo.
What do you think the best part of traveling is? Is it the food, or is it the conversation, or is it the sights and sound? If you're ready to explore, we are ready to show you the best way how. We'll give you access to the best luxury getaway sites in the Kingdom of Eswatini, and of course show you vacation sites that suit your budget, because you do not need a lot of money to actually have a great time. Join us on the next adventure on Buhle Bethu, only on Eswatini TV.
That's just 3 minutes before Kumbana. Yes, for sure. Very informative
Interview.
Appreciated.
Yeah. All right, Simbole, thank you for joining us. Sisambona winning lokufundile sisakhuluma ngayo nje quality education lapha eSwatini, particularly nje progress that has been made by UNESCO kanye nama stakeholders kuzama ukuthi sifike kuleli goli la number 4 by 2030 ukuthi kube bede lokusalela emuva. Tonke inkinga nama issues la khona labhekene nje netemfundo lapha eSwatini sitabe siwangcobile hopefully by the year 2030. We do hope you did enjoy ishow yethu lomuhla kanti mawusanza kuzivelela usangakhona kusibukela futhi ka YouTube Eswatini TV. Sala kahle, see you tomorrow.